2, 1. Taylor Gentry, myself, Road to Redemption Podcast, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good to be back here with you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back too.
Yes, we just got breaking news, and I'm going to let you announce it because I don't know the people's names and I will mispronounce them terribly. So break the news.
Okay, before I go into it though, are you having me go into this because I'm in a nice suit?
You are snazzy dressed. I wasn't going to mention. I was not going to mention it until the episode aired because I figured you would. Yes.
I'm not trying to upstage you in your own show. I swear.
Hey, I love the get up. You look great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do like your shoes though, the Papa Bear slippers.
Yes.
Those look super cool.
I'm in sweats and some sandals, and my man is dressed to the nines.
Well, I had somewhere to be before, so I came straight here from my last appointment.
So the attire is appropriate for both, then.
I guess so.
Hey.
All right, so the breaking news: Senator Kamala Harris just dropped out of the presidential race. I don't know how much of your audience follows politics.
I think most of them do. I think
okay.
I think most of them are very disappointed in my lack of knowledge in that area. So I think they'll enjoy having this.
Okay, well, let me just tell you this though. As a listener of your show, I actually love the fact that you're sort of apolitical. I guess that's the right phrase to use for you.
Apolitical?
Yeah, apolitical
means I don't.
Yeah, you don't really follow politics, or you don't necessarily have a political party that you subscribe to.
Yeah, apolitical. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I do follow politics, although I would say that like my views on things have really changed over the last 4 or 5 years.
What would you consider yourself if you had to?
I am a hardcore libertarian.
Libertarian means that you believe in smaller government, more people control.
Borderline anarchist.
Borderline anarchist,
like
which means no control by the government at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, a libertarian believes essentially in a society that is organized under that's organized by volunteerism and cooperation and free markets.
Which I believe would be great in theory. Yeah, I think.
Right. But I for right now, I would just like for us to at least like cut the size of the government down to like 1965 levels. I think that would be a good start.
So ideally, break it down for us. Because obviously some government is necessary. What do you see as being the necessary pillars of government?
I would say if we can just cut down government's overreach to just the military, the courts, and
even the courts, that's a stretch, isn't it?
Yeah,
the justice system is so fucked.
It can be a stretch because sometimes I feel like private arbitrators are better than our current court system in a lot of ways.
The biggest thing I think needs to stop is I don't think the government should be allowed to tell you what to do with your body, whether what you put in it or what you do with it in general. They should not be allowed to tell you that. I am so ignorant, and I have to be honest with you, on like healthcare. I know what it is here, and I know the pros and cons of the way we do it, and I know little about the way Canada and the UK do it with like a socialist healthcare system.
Yeah.
I don't know what we should do with that. I have no clue.
Well, for me, like I believe that the government should just be totally out of it. I think it should be purely privatized.
So you think you should be able to call a doctor who is his own company, it's his own practice. You call him because you know and trust him. Doc, I don't feel good. I need you to check me out. You pay him with your card. That's it.
Absolutely.
There's no insurance. There's no reason to. I agree.
100%. Now, I'm not anti-insurance because I think insurance is a good thing. I don't think you should be required by law to have insurance, but I'm not against anything unless as long as you're not forcing somebody at the point of the gun to own it or to buy it or to give money to it. Like I don't care. Like I think like for instance, I'm probably about to go down a serious rabbit hole.
Send it.
Like, I personally think that prostitution is immoral. As a devout Christian, we as Christians really believe that any sort of sexual act that's not between a married man and a married woman.
It's against what your beliefs
are. It's against what we believe. Right. However, I don't think it should be illegal. I think if a woman if that's her business, if she wants to be a sex worker and she wants to start her own sex working business, I think she should have every right to do that.
Now, what about a man?
Well, sure. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, if you, if you want to,
Because people do automatically, when we think prostitution, most people's minds go, oh, well, it's degrading to women, but it's like, dudes are going to do it too.
yeah. And I mean, there are some pockets in the country where prostitution is legal. Like there are counties in Nevada now that have legal sex work.
And throughout the world, I mean, Amsterdam and stuff like that, and other places.
Absolutely, and women get into it, willingly, and they make a very good living at it.
And I think if most people, now again, I'm with you in being that I am a very happily married man, and I believe in only having one woman in your life in that way, but I believe with most of the problems that we appear to have in this country with incels being violent and with things like that, I don't see it being a problem as to why we can go down and buy a beer, we can go down and buy food, we can go down and buy water, we can go down and buy cigarettes, but another natural urge of a human being sexual, if you don't have a companion in life who chooses to have that relationship with you, why can you not pay a person who is willing to do that for you as a service and goes, hey, I'm fulfilling this need of yours?
Absolutely. And it's not just for able-bodied people. I mean, there are a lot of disabled Americans that
well, if you made it legal, you would not be able to
sex workers.
Well, and you wouldn't be able to discriminate because it would be a field. It would be a regulated field of, hey, you can't discriminate against these people because of this, that, or the other.
Right, and I also believe drugs should be legal. All for, and again, like I'm a prude, so like I don't even drink alcohol. I've never smoked pot. I've never done any of that kind of stuff.
I can contest to this. He is true. He does not.
And me personally, I think doing drugs.
I'm a huge cannabis advocate, and I had a huge drinking problem. So this will be a good yin and yang.
Yeah. So I think if you want to do heroin, I think that's a horrible idea.
I agree.
But I don't think you should be thrown in a cage.
I agree.
You're
going to be thrown in a hole in the ground eventually.
Yeah, that's right. But but at the end of the day, that's your responsibility.
That is your right.
That's your choice.
And that's where I agree with you 100% because natural selection is a thing. What is it? Newton's law. Which one is Newton's law?
Newton. That's more like with gravity.
Is that what's the one? Anything. Not anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
That's Murphy's law.
That's Murphy's law. What's the one that pretty much it's like natural selection? The strongest survive. Darwinism.
Darwinism.
Yeah. So and again, we have things set in place as a country and as a people. We have fast food. We have fast cars. We have drugs. We have alcohol. We have fitness. We have dangerous activities like skydiving and rock climbing and all this crazy shit that we choose to do. We're allowed to go skydiving. You can go hurl yourself out of a fucking plane. But if you take a substance and inject it in your arm, they label that as so dangerous, you should go to prison for doing that. I think that's wrong. I choose not to skydive. I don't think it's the same as doing heroin on a socially acceptable level.
Although some people will argue that the adrenaline rush is the same, but
I've never done heroin. So
I've never done either, so I couldn't.
I couldn't compare. But I have had some pretty crazy drug experiences, and I have, been on airplanes and done some pretty adrenaline-thrilled shit. And I can't tell you the comparison is there. The comparison is there, but it's so crazy to me that we keep trying to fight off the universe helping us. Again, I was just talking to my dad about this actually, and it's like, okay, you watch a McDonald's line, and you see how long it is, and then you see the same cars, like I drive the same route almost every morning when I go to train one of my clients, I pass this McDonald's at like 4 a.m. And I can almost tell you exactly what car will be in the line, like a black van, then a blue, because it's the same people every morning. The
same people.
And I'm going, is that not natural selection right there? These people have gone, I've chosen not to eat healthy. They probably think that they're doing well because they're up at 4 a.m. and they're grabbing a quick breakfast. They're going to go to whatever job they have. And be productive. But then they look and it's like, well, that person's making that same choice really as the person that goes, I don't really care. Whatever pain I'm going through right now, this injection in my arm is worth it. Same way they're going, well, these hash browns aren't that bad for me.
Right.
But over 8 to 10 years,
they will be.
They will be, and your cholesterol is going to kill you, and whatever. I agree with you 100%. I don't think the government should be allowed to tell you No, you can't do heroin.
Right. I don't like the idea of someone who I didn't vote for and I did not pay for voluntarily to tell me what to do and to preach at me and tell me that they know me so well that they know what's best for me, because I don't think that that's actually true.
Well, and I know you've never used cannabis of any sort, but I think we've realized now in 2019 and almost going into a new decade, right? We're going into a new decade, or a new century, new decade.
New decade.
We're finding now, one, we've tossed people in jail, which, and this will help us circle back to what we were talking about originally. We're tossed people in jail for using cannabis for years. We're now prescribing cannabis to patients as medicines. So when my dad got all fucked up 2 weeks ago and fell down the stairs, the first thing I asked was, well, what did they give him when he first got to the hospital? What did they give him? Fentanyl. I said, now you gave this man fentanyl, but if he was caught 10 feet to the left outside of that door with that same substance in his body,
He'd been in jail.
You'd have been in fucking prison. And rightfully so. So you're telling me as long as it's administered by you because you say so much is acceptable, but like, what if you'd have killed him because of it? Then what? I mean,
crazy.
And it's again, but we're now going, well, you know, weed is still illegal, but not in Colorado.
Well, it's, I mean,
you know, it's
I am happy to see that, you know, a lot more states are either decriminalizing it or they are just outright making it fully legal.
I think when they make drugs legal, again, the natural selection will take over, and you're going to see a lot of people. It's going to suck because people's families are going to get demolished.
Well,
family size are going to shrink terribly.
I think that that's what's going to happen in the short term.
Initially, yes.
But long term, I think that's just going to, it's going to be so much more good because what you're, like, no, people don't realize how much of the issues and the conflicts that we are dealing with right now are tied to the war on drugs. If we end it now, so many things, so many of the issues that we have, what, you know, the immigration problems, the policing problems that we're having, and even the addiction problems itself, like, they are all going to be not completely done away with, but they're going to be significantly better. Because that's why the cartels are so powerful down in Mexico. That's why they're so violent as well, is because they have a monopoly over the drug trade, and they can be as violent and greedy as they want to be because they're the ones that set the price and they make the rules. But if you legalize it, why do they have to go to the cartels now? Now, like, Joe Bob down the street can essentially open up his own heroin dispensary, and he can start selling heroin, and because we freed up the market, it's not a black market anymore, it gives us a possibility to experiment and ultimately make drugs that might actually be safer for consumption.
Here's my big concern with it, is say we legalize drugs, whatever, which we've already seen in a lot of states. I think Ohio's battling with it right now. When they legalized medical marijuana, the state of Ohio then turns around and goes, but if you get caught growing it, and you're not one of these two companies, you're fucked.
I heard about that. And
you're fucked with a capital F, almost worse than if you'd ever got caught with a simple possession charge in the first place. And Ohioans are going, well, what the fuck? You're telling me it's legal. You're telling me it's of no harm to me, but you're also saying, why can't I grow my own? And you're saying you've acknowledged that it's a plant and it grows in the ground and it's, you know, some people would say a gift from God, you know, if you tend to roll that way. But for me, it's like, yeah, man, that's fucked. You can't do that.
Well, it's funny because, like, a lot of libertarians were actually against that particular measure in Ohio simply because it was only going to.
It was monopolizing.
Yeah, it was basically industry. It was going to be basically a lot. The state was essentially going to give the entire marijuana industry to just two companies.
You were going to essentially monopolize the healthcare industry coming up. Because everyone knows essentially pharmaceutical meds that will not be 1,000% necessary to the human body or to keep that person's well-being. People are cutting them shits off left and right. Diabetics, fucking people going through chemo. How many people are going, I don't want these medicines. You can give me cannabis, CBD oil, or leave me the fuck alone. But I'm not taking all these pain meds to get me through this stuff anymore. And one of the biggest things is I fear that when they legalize it, it's going to be that same way. Now, I have to play devil's advocate. I think, as someone who has been in the cannabis industry a while, I think letting it go completely unregulated could be very dangerous. Here's why. You get a guy who's been selling, and he's been selling a hard way 20-some years. This man's gone to prison, he's been away from his family, all so he could try to provide and make this life for himself, and he's done it by selling drugs. Now that's legal. So his customer base, just think straight business, which is what these people are, businessmen. They may not be great at marketing themselves in a lot of aspects of their lives, but they are businessmen. So now his customer base has options. They can go to freaking 7-Eleven and grab their cannabis. They don't need to come to him anymore. And they don't have to put up with his ghetto-ass bullshit. They don't have to wait for him for 45 minutes to an hour, like if anybody's ever bought weed before is usually the case. And there's no danger in it. Yeah. There's no chance I'm going to get shot just because you're having a bad day or whatever. Now, that's very uncommon, but it happens, right? So now what does this guy do? He's going to have his faithful few, but he's been trapping his whole life. So he hasn't only just sold weed, he's sold coke and stuff like that.
Sure.
Now he gets the good idea. How do I get these motherfuckers coming back? The ones I do have, it's not regulated. Over there it's regulated. Let me just put a little coke on their weed. Now, when they smoke weed, they think, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just getting the medical healing. Now they get addicted to coke, but they know where to go.
Right.
So they keep coming back, because he's got the ones that make them feel good. If it doesn't get regulated, you open up, again, a black market to something that doesn't need to be. But
the thing is, though... Like,
they could do that with our water supply, too, though, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, with that kind of scenario, though, I mean, that's still bad business.
It's terrible business.
It's terrible business, and I mean...
But people looking for an escape won't care. That's the problem. You get a 16-year-old kid that whatever is going on in his life, and we've both, thank God, made it through that parts of our lives, but do you remember how hard you felt emotionally at that age, 15, 16, 17?
Well,
like, when you feel things, you're like, dude, this is...
And I would argue I still do. But
I do too. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. And I'm that way. When I feel things, it's like, this is the last feeling I'll ever feel. This is everything that my life is about, is this feeling right now. That's how I typically react, unfortunately, a lot of the times. But, you know, and then you get a kid that just wants to escape that for 5 seconds. He knows both his parents smoke weed, his teachers smoke weed. All right, cool. This guy's brother sells it. I can get it. I ain't even got to go to 7-Eleven, because there's going to be laws on this shit. You're going to have to be 21, just like anything else. It's going to be treated essentially like alcohol, like an intoxicant. If you get caught driving with it, you're going to be fucked. Or on it, you're going to be fucked. And if you get caught giving it to minors, you're going to be fucked.
Yeah, no. But I will also say, this is kind of a weird sidebar, but I think the drinking age should be lowered to 18. I've always felt
Go on that. I'd like to hear your opinion.
Well, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me why you can join the Army at age 18 and essentially get your legs blown off and you basically potentially go over to a foreign country, kill someone, be killed.
Agreed.
You can vote, you can buy cigarettes, you can play the lottery, you can vote. I said vote twice. You can basically do all of that, but you can't have a drink. And for me, that just... If you're a combat veteran at age 18, 19, which there have been quite a few of those in our country's history, I don't see why you can't get a beer. And a matter of fact, in some cases, you probably deserve one with everything you've been through anyway. So
I agree. Now, my caveat, only because I do believe in always having a devil's advocate in the room, whether I believe in the stance I'm voicing or not, I would argue almost even 2 wrongs don't make it right.
Yeah.
Just because a child can be sent off to war at 18 doesn't necessarily make it right that he should then be able to drink at 18. I think the initial problem is, hey, let's not send our kids off so young.
Oh, no, I'm with you there, 100%.
I have to say that as a kid who had to join the service at 18 because my life was in shambles and I had no other choice, I think there needs to be another choice. We've always in this country done... In a lot of situations, and mine included, especially back in the Vietnam days, it was, you go to jail or you join the military.
I agree with you. I'm glad you said that
Yeah.
because I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, I think we need to, in this country, we live by such old standards, and we have become, we have allowed ourselves to become sheeps in a way that we don't even understand, like daylight savings time.
Yeah.
Why the fuck do we change the time? Just because we've always done it, it's always something that's just been, oh, we just do that now. And then in 2019, somebody finally went, hey, that's fucking dumb. Why are we doing this all the time?
No, we don't.
Now Tennessee, we don't do it here. This last one is the last one, and now it's a law. We're done.
Thank God.
But then again, so just like that, we've just always gone. Well, at the age of 18, you can buy cigarettes and dip, and you can join the army, and you can buy a long gun. It's like, well, wait a minute. You shouldn't be able to do any of those things at 18 years old. That you're a child at 18 years old. But because we've always done it, so then you have to go. Well, what is the age? 21.
And
can that kid go off to war?
Age, I will say, age of consent laws, they're strange.
Well, and it's weird because age of consent on one thing would be different for another.
Well, and you know, and in a lot of ways, like, you know, there are individuals that, you know, it's what I'm trying to say is some things are different for different individuals. Like,
correct.
I would argue that, you know, I was pretty mature at age 18 to vote and to buy cigarettes and stuff like that, but most of the people around me weren't.
Well, and you also were 18 years old and chose to never do any of those things.
Yeah.
You never chose to smoke. You never chose to dip. You never chose to exercise that thing, even though you had the same abilities that I did.
Right, but I mean, even today, you know, a lot of people would argue that, like, I'm a different individual than, you know, a lot of people in my age group. So
I would disagree.
Oh?
I would disagree. I think you are a man that grew up in the 90s like myself. We grew up,
in the 90s, yeah.
again, we grew up in a time where we thought a lot of things that were not true coming up. We thought the world was a certain way, and we were told that the world was a certain way, so we held ourselves to a certain standard. In 2019, we've all realized one big, massive shift that has occurred where people, in general, have started to go, I am no longer interested in whether you were an athlete in high school. I'm not really interested in what your popularity level was. Who are you as a person?
Yeah.
Not what do you put on Instagram, not what do you put on your Facebook or on your vlog. Who are you? Now when people are starting to see who you are, and they're seeing Count Drahoon, and they're seeing Taylor Gentry as a whole, snazzy dressed, then you can go and produce these live shows, which we're going to get into, and then turn around and produce a podcast, and then all the other stuff that you do. I think people are starting to look and go, oh, that's a very mature individual, because there are people your age who are still living on their parents' couch, smoking weed, going to the nightclubs. So while you may be very critical of yourself because you're basing your life off of a standard that was set for us by usually most 90s kids statistically grew up with terrible relationships with either one or both of their parents, divorced households, and the biggest influences we had were either on the TV, radio, or internet.
Well, for me, definitely a divorced household, but I'd say I still have a really good relationship with my parents.
Of course, yeah.
And I know you weren't talking about me specifically.
Specifically,
you were being general.
yeah.
Right, no. And I think you are right about that. But
like, what would you say your biggest influence on your life was? When you were coming up, when you based your actions, when you were judging your actions and what you were about to do and the things you wanted to pursue, what did you base them off of? Was it what your parents thought? How you thought you were supposed to grow up? Or did you care more of, well, I see the influences of things I care about in the movies I like, I want to be more like that?
See, that's actually a really good question. And for me, I don't know if I can really answer that fully because I've been doing a lot of introspection lately.
Good.
And for me, from what I can remember, is that even today, I've had sort of a difficult time. It's like there's an inner conflict in me of how I should see myself and how people actually see me. And some of that comes from, you know, the tropes, the things I was raised on, and then some of it is just the things that I have kind of concluded myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's copacetic with what I was taught as a kid, but then other times it contradicts what I grew up with.
Here's something I've had to play this game with myself a lot, and I think you'll enjoy it. So how do you today, as of December 4th, whatever it is, today, how do you think most people perceive you? Without, even if they weren't, maybe, let me give you a scenario. Someone gets to see your show, they get to talk to you a little bit after, they get to searching about you on social media, and then they see you one more time, maybe at a get-together, and they just casually get to meet you. What do you think their perception of you is?
Well, you know, I'm honestly not trying to sidestep your question, but I genuinely don't know.
So when you walk into a room, what is the first thing you assume people think about you?
Well, I'll tell you what. It kind of depends on where I'm at in my state of mind.
Good. Okay, go on.
So, like, there are days where I feel really good, and the perception that I feel people see me is just this nice guy, very quirky, old-fashioned, but in an interesting way, because I do use a lot of archaic words. Like, the word archaic itself is archaic, no pun intended there. And just a genuinely decent person, because I do try to, I try to help people, and we've been friends for a while, and and I feel bad sometimes whenever we go a few months without talking to each other.
I'm the same way, but I'm bad.
I definitely don't mean that, but at the same time, it's like I know you're busy, I've been busy, so that's just life, and it happens.
Crazy, yeah.
And then so those are the good days, and then the bad days, when things aren't going quite the way that I want them to, I kind of sort of feed into the negativity that I'm just this weird guy that's just out of place, and I'm kind of awkward, and I can be negative, but I'm more self-negative. I don't
project out negativity.
Yeah, like I'm not negative about other people. Like if I feel like a crappy person, like I still think the worldview and all that. If that makes sense.
Yes. Do you have a tendency when you feel bad to? I call it Eeyoring. I Eeyore very badly. Where when I'm feeling bad or I'm depressed, I go, well, it's just my luck. It's just how I am, and this is the way my life goes.
I do, but I think
we're all guilty of it.
It's important to point out though that, and I'm sure most people are like this. Like I Eeyore about me, not
about
necessarily,
me, yes.
not about other people. Like because I have a lot of really good people in my life, and even if I'm super down on myself, like I never want to try to bring them at my level, because that's just not a good thing to do.
As I've gone through, especially this last year of my life, I've made a general rule that I try to live by. Obviously, I'm not perfect at it, but when I look at someone being nasty, right, whether I see someone being nasty to a waiter, maybe my wife or myself is having a bad day, and maybe I'm nasty to her, or whatever the situation may be, I try to really look at it now, and I go, you know what? I bet that has nothing to do with that situation. I bet whatever's going on, because I've lived a pretty rough 27 years, I remember there have been times where I've treated people very poorly, and it was because of everything that was going on in my life had nothing to do with that person.
Yeah, I think that's almost always true.
And when you try to take that perspective in life, even when you're having the worst day, I try my best to not ever, like even when I order food, to not just go, oh, thanks, and whatever, because that puts them out. That person's like, man, what the fuck? Like,
right.
And then they get some type of...
And you don't have a reason to be mean to those people.
I think your energy is just so contagious, and I think that's something we have to be very aware of, and I think that's why you draw people to you, even though you don't think you do. I think people are very interested by you because one, you're not the run of the mill, which is why we're friends, because I like that about you. And I also think that you have a lot to offer people in the way of the unexpected. You, on your worst day, you see yourself as we'll call it an outlier, maybe? Or you see yourself as somebody who kind of watches from the outside because of...
Yeah, no, I've always felt like an outsider.
Yeah.
Like a black... I've used the term black sheep a lot lately, and I don't use that as a negative term. It's
No.
just, I just mean that...
But it's a fact.
Yeah, I stand out from, like, my family.
So this is coming to the conclusion of the game we're playing now that we've come full circle with it. What is your favorite character in the world? Of any of the movies you've been into, what is your favorite? I know that's a tough question for you because you're a monster. What's your favorite character?
Well, should I just my favorite of all time, or should I, since you know my background, should I go outside of the realm?
Go outside go outside that.
Oh man, that is hard.
That's why I didn't mean to hit you with such a loaded question.
Because I mean, you know it's Count Dracula,
yeah.
But since I can't say that,
Right.
ooh, that's hard. I'll tell you what. For me, it is the Little Tramp.
Okay.
Charlie Chaplin.
Okay, so explain his character role a little bit.
Well,
for those that may not know.
I mean, Charlie Chaplin. I mean, you can Google him. He's a very.
He was like one of the OG.
This silly character, who kind of gets into these shenanigans all the time, like in The Kid. You know, he's just kind of wandering around because he's basically a beggar. He's homeless. And he finds a kid in a dumpster, basically. Okay. And he takes the kid in, and he raises the kid himself. But because he's in squalor, the government basically takes the kid away from him, so he spends the rest of the movie trying to basically get the kid back. And he does. So it's just this... I guess one of the big reasons why I love the Little Tramp so much is because he is a diamond in the rough. Like, he's this very unique person in a very in a lot of ways in a dark situation, but like you forget how much dire straits that he's in because he's just such an endearing character. Like, you don't notice the poverty, you don't notice
endearing in the sense of he never really loses hope.
Yeah, well, he never loses himself. Like,
never.
he's just rolling with the punches.
He didn't let life affect him.
And he went through a lot. If you've seen any of the movies, like he went through a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Especially in City Lights, which is probably my favorite.
Okay.
You know, he basically spends the entire movie trying to come up with a way to get money for a woman that he's in love with who's blind.
Hmm.
And granted, he doesn't steal money or anything like that. Like, he's not a criminal.
Sure.
But he is accused of theft.
Secret, yeah.
But he figures out a way to get the money to the woman, and he goes to jail for years. But he's completely content because he knows that the woman that he's in love with got the surgery and she can see now. So whenever he finally gets out of prison, the first thing he does is go to see her. And this is literally, the movie ends with, like, literally she takes a look at him and she realizes that's the guy.
That's the reason she can see.
Right. This is a beautiful movie.
It is. It sounds beautiful. The reason I ask those questions is because you, as your friend and as a fan of your show and as just all around, your greatest criticism of yourself is that you appear to be an outlier to others, though your greatest strength is that you portray these characters who are infamous for being outliers to others. Mm-hmm. Do you see the irony in that?
Yes, I do.
It's ironic.
Yeah, no, I'm like
your
a walking...
your greatest strength is also the thing that you use against yourself, so I want to encourage you not to do that. You, my friend, have a very contagious energy where the right people who can appreciate you for what you are and what you do, they want to be around you.
I appreciate that, kid.
Everybody else, man, it's like, one thing I've had to learn, especially since the fight thing and all that, dude, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. You're not going to be.
No, I'm not.
There are people that we associate with on a daily, but I'm sure moment by moment I'm not my wife's cup of tea. I'm sure I annoy the shit out of her sometimes, and she agreed to stay with me for the rest of her life. So I want to encourage you, try not to worry, man, because every single person in this world, and I know it's probably not something you consume your mind with a lot, but every person in this world I've found, we judge ourselves based off very unrealistic standards. We judge ourselves based off of characters we watched in movies when we were growing up. And we do this subconsciously. I don't even think we pay attention to it. When we grow up, we base our political views and our religious views based off what we knew. Most of us, if you were raised going to Mass on Sunday, well, you probably maintain that tradition into your adulthood. I think it's important that we look and go, none of us know shit. You know, we spend so much time trying to downplay who we are because we don't think it fits into society when really we have no business even trying to fit into society. It's not anything desirable. There's nothing over there. We've tried it. I know you have. Tried to play the 9-to-5 gig and see how it works out for you, and it fucking sucks. It sucks. I think your greatest gift to the world is being Count Drahoon and being you unapologetically, like I've told you 1,000 times. Now that we're done kissing your ass, back to what's the lady's name?
Kamala Harris. Okay.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Okay. So she just she dropped out of the race.
Yes.
Biggest thing is that she really wasn't doing well in the polls.
She conflicted herself a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She was a big flip flopper.
She sent a lot of conflicting messages, even to her masses that tried to support her.
Right. Her big thing was, like, on one issue, she said that she was for getting rid of private insurance, completely abolishing private insurance in favor of Medicare for all. Then she flip-flopped on that.
We originally started about the cannabis because I wanted to circle back to
with cannabis.
Okay,
so in an interview a few months ago, and this was when she was actually rising in the polls, she got up to second place, like right at Joe Biden's heels.
She admitted she smoked pot once.
Yeah, she admitted she smoked pot once, and then she laughed about it. But the scary irony in all of that situation is that, you know, before she was elected as the California senator, she was California's attorney general, and she was a prosecutor. And I believe she convicted, she had roughly like 12 to 1,500 successful convictions of people with drug possession charges. And of course, a lot of these drug possession charges were just simple possession of marijuana. Yeah. So these folks are essentially languishing in prison indefinitely for simply owning a plant.
Yeah, possessing.
And she has the gall to basically laugh her ass off about the fact that she smoked pot.
Ah, I see. Yes.
And Tulsi Gabbard, who I think is probably the only decent Democratic candidate.
And she's a Democrat.
Yeah. And even then, like, she's only decent. I don't think she's wonderful, but she really went after her, and I think her little exchange with her in one of the debates a few months ago, it actually helped torpedo her candidacy. So now she's out, and I think there's still 15 Democrats that are still running. So, like, we basically had 3 Democratic candidates that left this week. Steve Bullock of Montana, Tom Seastack, who's a congressman. Nobody's ever heard of these guys, I know, and Kamala. And then this week, those 3 jumped out, and another guy's jumping in, Michael Bloomberg, the former New York City mayor. So now he's in the race, and he just made the announcement, I think, a few days ago, and he's already polling at like 2.8%, so we'll see how well he actually does.
So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and it's going to it will allow you to remain, or at least seem biased. If you want to give your bias, you can.
Well, it's already out, so
that's true. So, what do you think is the best thing that our current president has done since he has been in office? The best thing.
Okay.
If you had to pick one.
The best thing that he has done, and really I don't know if you can give him full credit, was he has really shown how the sausage is made in terms of the connections between the media and the government, and just the overall power dynamic of this country. He's essentially torn the veil off, and
he's exposed it at every level.
And I don't know how much you can say is him directly doing that, or him just sort of inadvertently doing that.
I think even his weaknesses have caused it. You know, I think even the things that those of us that maybe even supported him or tried to in the beginning, even those of us now, we're like, man, you guys realize all the stuff you call him dumb for is also, again, his greatest strength.
Right, like
he's exposed so much.
And I can't use this because I didn't make it up, but I heard somebody make the point that he does have these unintended brilliant moments from time to time. That's, for me, it's very hard.
It's tough to attach the word brilliant to him. It is tough, but
well, it's not. Brilliance is probably a strong
miraculous
word,
in the fact that it worked somehow.
Well, but I think you know what I'm talking.
I do.
He's,
it's this chaos that ends up when the dust clears. You go, oh.
Right.
I see what he was trying to do.
Trying to do or trying to say.
Yeah, maybe, using dynamite to get rid of that building might have been excessive.
That's a perfect analogy. He's fishing with dynamite.
He's fishing with dynamite, or he's trying to clean with dynamite. He's just going, this building is dirty.
Yeah, because for whatever, of all the dumb things that he says, and he says a lot of dumb shit, he somehow makes the other people who are against him look dumber.
Look dumber.
And that's what you could say what you want about that, but that's a talent.
He does. I know you are, but what am I? So much better than anyone else.
He does.
It's that way.
And he also has this weird, because he did this with Jeb Bush.
And I'm not kissing the president's ass.
No, because I'm not.
He has his flaws.
I am not a Trump supporter. I've never voted for Trump.
But I'm not anti-Trump either. I'm not anti him. I think. Now again, I don't listen to the man either. So anything that people have perceived, and I'm sure that there's going to be somebody on the internet between something you've said or things I've said, where they're going to go, well, if you believe that, then you believe that you're a fucking racist, and you can eat dicks. The biggest problem I have with all that is just because you don't think he's a complete dickhead in all aspects of his life doesn't mean you're a racist. I don't know everything the man says. I don't know his personal beliefs on other races, nor do I care, because I only care about how I treat other people.
And I'm not pro-Trump simply because
I'm also not convinced he's a racist.
I don't really think he is either.
I think he said some dumb shit sometimes that people have been like, hey bro, that doesn't sound good.
I think you're right. I think he's very
You should maybe not say that again.
I think he's very insensitive, and he says a lot of insensitive things to rile people up. But I don't think he's I think he's just a troll. I think that's what he is. And I think that's actually one of the things that I like about him. I like that he is funny. Objectively, he's just funny, whether he means to be or not. He's a caricature.
I respect the fact that he's willing, and I know that all the liberals go, I know Trump supporters are just going to say that they like him because he's edgy, but it's like, for me, I like the fact that he almost has a daily podcast. Where it's like, I have a show, you have a show, and I've said things on my show before that were off the top of my head. It was a whim, and afterwards I'm like, God, I wish I wouldn't have said maybe that, or I wish I would have maybe elaborated on that point.
And he doesn't care.
He has a camera in his face all the time, and one of the things I wanted to mention, because with that girl dropping out, they were saying how terribly she did in the debates, and it's like, well, they give those people 2 minutes to talk.
Yeah.
Well, the president's the same way. He steps out of his home and he's about to go deal with some dictator in North Korea, and some asshole comes up with a camera and goes, well, President Trump, why are you a racist? And he's like, I'm not a racist. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, no, you are a racist, but we need to know why. And he's like, I don't have to deal with this shit. Like,
and he's a brilliant marketer. Like
he is. You can't take that from him.
He knows that he only, and that's why he did so well in the debates, because he recognized what the debates actually were. They weren't.
It was a snippet.
Yeah, that's what I hate about political discourse.
Which is what he gave people.
We all act like it's all theater. Like we act like these presidential debates are supposed to get to the issues and we're supposed to learn. That's not what it is.
It's all creating clickbait.
It is pageantry.
Yes.
It is, how well can I say the right things without saying the wrong things? Do I look pretty when I say it? That's all that it is.
Well, and it's also, so if I'm Kamala Harris or one of the Democrats, what can I say that my media, being CNN or whoever, will take, and how many clips can I make them run with my name in it?
That's all it is.
That's it.
And Trump...
Whether it's shocking, good or bad, how many times can I get them to say my name? And that's what Trump does the best.
He does. And he plays... the reason why he won, and I know a lot of people will jump at me and say, well, Hillary Clinton technically got more votes than he did. It's like, sure, but he won where it counted.
Yes.
He won because he played by his own game. And the politicians just didn't know how to handle that, so they just kept playing their game, and they were basically digging their own graves. And they just didn't know what to do, because Trump was very clearly, jumping into this thing head first, and they only know how to do polished stuff.
The biggest thing that I have admired through the entire process, and I think nobody gives him enough credit for this, he was a celebrity.
Yeah.
That's all he was. He was a celebrity and a great businessman.
I'd go further and say he was a pop culture icon.
He was a pop culture icon, yes. Because, again, before he was president, rappers loved him, politicians loved him, company CEOs loved him.
Everybody knew who Donald Trump was.
And they loved him. Whether they had personal beefs with him, they never said it because of how powerful he was. So, Trump was, when he was a younger guy, was having whining and dining with politicians. That man knew the system before he ever got in.
And he even said that in a debate that he bought politicians from both parties. Like, it's no secret.
He knew how to go, watch this. You guys want to see what's wrong? Watch this. And then he goes, hey, I'm not going to do everything right. I'm a person. I mess up for sure. But everything that's going on here is way worse than whatever I'm doing.
So I would say that, and then the stuff that he did with North Korea, I was actually a big fan of. I like that he was actually...
I appreciate that you remembered there was a question in there, because I had completely forgotten.
No, you're good. But to me, those are the two things. And that's what has really bothered me about a lot of the Democrats. It's like, because, he has sat down and he's legitimately tried to make peace with North Korea. Because what people don't realize is that we were still technically at war with them.
Yes.
From 1953 or 54, 56 when we left Korea. We were still theoretically at war. It was a ceasefire.
Yes.
And now it's gone. The Korean War ended.
Is over.
Last year.
Yep.
That is an incredible thing. And that's a good thing. We should be winding down all of these foreign conflicts that we're in right now. That's what I say. But the fact that the media just couldn't give that to them, and they basically sounded like a bunch of crazy war hawks and said, how dare he meet with dictators, and how dare he give the middle finger to our allies, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, here's the thing, there's 30 million people who live in North Korea, and they are all quite literally enslaved by this dictator.
From the moment they open and shut their eyes.
Anything that he can do to
help that
and not kill them through war or increasing sanctions.
Turning it into a parking lot.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing, yeah.
That is a good thing.
Yeah.
And almost every progressive that I have talked to will not acknowledge that point. They refuse to acknowledge that point. To. And that scares the living piss out of me, because literally 15 years ago, they were saying that George W. Bush should have been indicted for war crimes, which I actually agree with. But I don't see how now Donald Trump is just the ultimate Satan, because he will not do what George Bush did, which 15 years ago they were saying that this is why George Bush should be in prison. It makes, and I know it's not, because it's not an ideology thing. It's a team thing. It's Team Democrats and Team Republicans. I know that.
It is, but I think it kind of, again, to come full circle to what we've talked about, I wanna play the scenario again of the same person who goes into the McDonald's line every single morning.
Sure.
They go there. They plug their phones in while they're listening to whatever the fuck they listen to in the morning, their favorite YouTuber, their current favorite song, or a podcast, whatever. Some people, if you're old school, you're listening to Fox News, CNN, radio in the morning, whatever. Those same people probably consume themselves so much with what President Trump has done, what Hillary's doing, did Epstein kill himself, let's share a few memes about Epstein killing himself, let me talk shit on a comment section, let me clock into work, half-ass it until lunch, go home, watch my favorite Netflix show, go to bed. That person spends so much time caring about, well, Trump did this, and not even what he's actually doing. This stuff like with North Korea, but he said this. He tweeted that. He, whatever. And to me, that just seems like such a waste of fucking time.
Yeah.
To sit around, and especially for people that claim they hate him so much, it's like, if you hate him so much, why do you know everything about him?
Mm-hmm.
You've essentially turned your greatest enemy into a mountain in your mind now. You've created this huge monster that he's not even, and I'm not saying that he's not a monster, I'm just saying they've almost inflated him to a Hitler level that he doesn't even deserve to be at. Like, Hitler did atrocious things to be labeled the monster he is. Again, I think they're giving him a lot of credit in areas he doesn't even deserve. Like, I don't think he has made race tensions worse in this country. I think they're better than ever. Personally, I don't see, when I walk through Tennessee, I don't watch people look at each other crazy because of their skin color. That was not the case in the 90s.
No, I think you have a good point there. And it's funny that you say that because I live in a different part of the state. You live here in Clarksville and I live in...
You're what, east or north?
I think east.
I'm terrible with geography.
Nah, that's okay because I live on the other side of Nashville.
Yes.
In a different county.
Yeah.
And somebody literally, I won't say his name because he's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. But he looked at me and just serious as he could be, he's like, like the town that we live in, like we have a neo-Nazi problem. And
was he being serious or he was joking?
He was being dead serious.
So there is one there.
No.
Or there's not.
If there is one, I missed it. And I honestly
I do remember there was a neo-Nazi rally down there.
Okay, but those guys weren't even from Murfreesboro. They came from different parts of the South.
That's probably what he's talking about.
That is what he's talking about. But it's like, if they live here, they live in completely different parts of either the state or the country. It's like, I've lived here practically my whole life. I have never actually seen a neo-Nazi or a Klansman before. Ever.
No, I mean, but I don't run in those circles either.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
And I would assume that you would probably have to go to great lengths to find those people. And those are lengths that I don't want to go through.
Yeah, you would have to definitely know at least the beginning of those channels, and that's not a interest of mine in any way.
I wouldn't know where to start, and I don't know anybody that would know anybody. So I just don't see how you can say, we have a problem.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, for sure.
Yeah, I say all that to say, if you watch the news and you just hang on every word that the president says, you would get the impression that we're just on the verge of an all-out civil war. And I'm not 100% sure we're there. Granted, we could be closer than I think. I don't know, but I don't know. At least where I live, in Murfreesboro, there's, we have a good community. We have a strong community. We have a very diverse community,
and you're not saying that you're not accepting the fact that there are blatant assholes inside of every community. There are.
Well, sure there are.
There are assholes in every community.
And and the thing is, I know for a fact that there are racists and bigots in the world, but I think that that's been a problem since the beginning of time, and I don't see that problem ever going away. Now, I think it's a good thing that, we teach people to be accepting and to be loving of other people and not judge them for whatever reason, skin color or sexual orientation or anything like that. I think those are really good things. But at the same time, I think, though, that we've gotten into this weird notion, this weird mob mentality that, if we use the government to get in there and squash quote unquote racism or bigotry, it'll go away. And I think ultimately that's probably going to breed more racism and bigotry.
It will, only because no one from the beginning of time ever has been. No one likes being told what to do or how to think or how to feel. They don't like it, especially here in America when it's what we're founded on, that you cannot do that. Here's my thing with everything, with all that. The racism and the bigotry and this, especially the sexual orientation stuff, I struggle with that one a lot because as an adult, talking about other adults, I believe you should do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Right.
You hug and kiss on whoever you want. If you want to wear whatever type of underwear you want under your skivvies, do what you got to do. I don't give a fuck. But here's my thing. I will not, and this is something I take a hard stance on, I will not raise my daughters to... I believe in leaving a child's imagination to run wild and run free. I hope that my kids can imagine every pink unicorn, and they imagine when they play with their toys that they're in the movies that they see, and I hope that's the case. What I will not make them do is walk down the fucking street and watch a grown man in a beard wear a sparkly pink dress, introduce himself as Felicia, and then come off crazy when you don't call him by his respected vernacular. That guy can get fucked because he's crazy. That's a crazy person. If you are getting upset with a child or a person because they can't make out whatever the fuck this is, just off one snap judgment of you, you're asking them to do what their parents have hardwired them to not do, which is judge someone based off an appearance. You're asking them to now change that. Because they're looking at you and going, well, that's something. I'm going to go with, hello, sir. Well, don't you call me a fucking sir. And it's like, well, hey, man, easy.
Yeah,
because
these are kids.
These are not only kids, but also you have to remember these are adults who were always raised to at least try to be polite. So just because now you all of a sudden go, well, I can look like this mashup of genetics, I'm allowed to enthrall this anger and this irrational rage upon your life and exposure, possibly your kids, to this, solely so I can be seen as interesting and different from the run-of-the-mill. Hey, again, if you want to do that shit, you do that. My whole thing with it has just been, I don't force anyone to believe anything religiously. I know you don't either, and I don't believe anyone should be able to tell you how to think politically or who to fall in love with. I also don't believe if you do live a life that has not been accepted in the past 20 years, I think you have to be very understanding that there's going to be a transformation period, and you cannot ask people to start calling you things like Zer and Za and stuff like that, because that's not real. That doesn't exist. If you try to live outside of the parameters of actual fact, and this is what is, there are men, there are women, and there are hybrid beings in the middle of whatever. I don't even remember what you call those.
Well, my whole thing is like, I don't know enough about trans issues to really comment on that.
I know that you should never give hormones to a child to change their genetics while they are children.
Absolutely.
You should go to fucking prison if you try to change your child's DNA makeup.
Yeah, and
as a child.
I find it really weird.
You should go to fucking prison for that.
I find it really weird that that's somehow now a controversial stance.
Well, again, we just came off a stance where a man made a legitimate case to a court where it actually got debated about, he made the stance that because he's a pedophile, it's not his fault. His brain tells him he's attracted to children. Why is that his fault? That should not be illegal for that to be the case. It's like, hey, no, that's fucking illegal. Just because you may have a mental health issue and there's something that we got to figure out why your wires are connecting those two things, may not be your fault. But we're not going to now change our standards of communal living to say that now you get to fuck kids. Nope. Sorry. Not going to happen.
Yeah, like Salon ran an article like a couple years ago. Like the title of it was, I'm a pedophile, but I'm not a monster. And it was about a guy. It was written by a guy who claimed to be a pedophile. Of course, he was using a pseudonym because I assumed that if he came out with his real name, somebody probably would have tried to find him and kill him.
Sure.
But he basically claimed that he was a pedophile, he was attracted to children, but he never acted on his urges. That's what he claimed. But yeah, I think it's, that whole thing, like, and I know that there's like I don't want to call it paranoid, but there is a notion of fear out there that might be the next big social justice movement, like basically trying to normalize pedophilia.
It'll never happen, I can promise you that. Or my kids will become homeschooled.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole, at least as of right now, that whole notion might be blown out of proportion.
I think most stories are.
I don't think there's a major push to do that.
I think most stories are blown out of proportion. I'm with you. I think for the sake of entertainment, I'm giving it a little more legitimacy than it probably deserves.
Sure.
But I think...
And sometimes I do too.
The fact that we even entertain that, though, to me is kind of insane.
Yeah, no, like for anybody to entertain that.
But look what we've done as a community and especially as a country here in the United States. What is the number one trending thing on, like, what do you call them? Streaming services. Fucking serial killer shows.
Yeah.
And what are they doing in these serial killer shows? They're giving you access to this person and humanizing him. One of my favorite shows right now, and I'm gonna fucking gap on the name because I tried to say it too fast. It's the one where you may not have seen it, you may have. The guy is a detective for the FBI. He's talking to serial killers. He's trying to get inside their mind.
Is it Mindhunter?
Mindhunter, that's it. In that show, my favorite characters in the show are the serial killers. Mm-hmm. Because you're listening to them and they humanize them. And then in the same regards, we take to our actual lives, and someone that we would have seen on the side of the highway as homeless and in need of some real mental help, now that they have a Twitter or an Instagram and they can maybe get a couple followers because what people are looking at is so shocking and just sensory overload in a lot of cases of what the fuck is going on here, you know? And it's not to make light of the situation, but it's genuinely just, what is this? I mean, again, if I had a guy in my community growing up, then it was a grown man wearing pink rain boots and a Hello Kitty backpack with long dyed pink hair, I would go, well, there's something wrong with that person. Like, that's not a normal thing to do. Now, that doesn't make me right for saying that. Just he has the right.
But that would have been your visceral reaction.
That would have been my reaction back then. So, yes, because I've grown now to go, hey, that's that man's right. If that's how he chooses to express himself, I like that. And, hey, dude, I respect the fact that you got the confidence to do it because I couldn't. Yeah. But I do not have to then turn around and tell my kids, oh, yeah, the reason your daddy doesn't do that is because, well, I'm not crazy. And there's no reason for me to do something like that. I just think because of humanizing things like serial killers and all these stories and all these movies that we watch, we've now tried to normalize insanity in our real lives.
Yeah,
we've desensitized ourselves to the point where now we look at things that should be shocking and we go, well, we have to just accept that that's the way it is. It's like, no, we don't. That's not real.
It's called relativism. Well, like essentially, like what your truth is, whatever you make of it.
So here's the thing. There's a theory that goes around. I know I'm jumping a little bit. There's a theory that goes around that would state that some people believe we're in a simulation of sorts, right? That our avatars are being controlled or whatever.
I don't believe that, but yeah, I've heard that.
My only thing that would support any type of theory like that is in a video game, and I don't know how many video games you've played or if you're a big advocate of them. I haven't played one in years.
It's been a while since I played them.
In today's day and age, these kids really thrive on the fact that they can really make that world their own. Mm-hmm. They can create whatever they want, and it can be as outlandish as it needs to be, and it's all in their control, right? Mm-hmm. And they spend hours doing this, whether it's Grand Theft Auto, whether hitting prostitutes with cars and stealing large sums of money, or they're building these castles and this big extravagant thing, or they're slaying people down in Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. They're spending hours and hours and hours doing this, all very unrealistic things, creating things in moments that would take millenniums, and creating these characters that are outlandish looking, and then they disconnect, and now they got to go to school. Yeah. Go to school and focus on these numbers and these letters that are boring as fuck to everybody. We've all accepted, unless you're an accountant, a doctor, or whatever, it fucking sucks to sit there and do that. Right. And these kids have these fantasies in their heads of, dude, I'm a pink fucking unicorn. Like, that's I just was for the last 8 hours, so why can I not be that here too? Mm-hmm. And I think we as adults have failed to go, hey, fiction, reality. Can't, outside of your bedrooms for being the freaks that some people are, you don't get to cross those barriers outside of that, You want to dress up like a furry and fuck each other, you do what you got to do inside your own private house. But don't act like that's a normal thing that people just do out in public and shit.
So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of truth in what you said, but I also think that on the flip side of that, there is in a lot of ways a very strict conformism too. Like, you have to fit within this, and I know that that's just the nature of the world in general. Like, you have to fit within, parameters X, Y, and Z.
You have to fall in somewhere.
Right. You have to have a label.
Which I disagree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I think that kind of and what I'm saying is not contradicting what you're saying at all, because like I totally hear you there, because like in all actuality, like I'm not really a vampire. I can't drink blood. I do actually have to have sunlight because the vitamin D is good for my skin.
And you have to have normalcy. You can't walk around as Count Drahoon the vampire 24 hours a day, or else we would have to go, buddy.
Yeah.
Plus
the makeup is really bad for my skin.
Yeah, you would break out and you would sweat terribly.
And which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, makeup has a shelf life.
I did not.
Yeah, you can't just buy a makeup from the store and then just use it until you run out. Like it usually runs out about a year. And
that
then
is a problem I would not know.
Yeah. Well, I found that out the hard way because I put it on for a show one night.
It was like a brick.
And it was, no, like it applied to my face normally, but I noticed that there was like a slight burning sensation on my forehead. And then when I washed it off after the show, the next morning, like my face looked like it had just like a burn on my forehead, and it was very, very noticeable. And I walked into work the next day, and my coworker, she was like, "What happened to your face?" I'm like, "I don't know. I think it just broke out from the makeup." And that's when I found out. I actually found out from her because she's a lady, so she's like, "Well, your makeup probably expired." I was like, "I didn't know makeup could expire." And she's like, "Yeah, dude."
Wow. So you got a big old irritation mark on the top of your head.
Yeah, and so I have to get new makeup periodically
for being the count.
For being the count.
Well, and to bring you back real quick, and then we'll wrap it up because we've been doing this for over an hour. Like you were saying, you cannot walk around as Count Drahoon all the time. Mm-hmm. I cannot walk around fighting people all the time.
Although sometimes I'd like to walk around as Count Drahoon all the time. I get really interesting reactions.
I'm sure that you would. So again, let's play with that scenario for a second because I like it. Say you did that. You as Taylor Gentry one day went, "Hey, you don't get to call me Taylor Gentry anymore. Mm-hmm. I am Count Drahoon because that's what I enjoy. Mm-hmm. You have to accept that I'm going to walk around in this makeup, in this. When I come into your establishment, you have to treat me as I'm a normal being. So if I sit down and I, whatever, that's what you got to do." Mm-hmm. That would be very difficult to just accept that of people. Well, to expect that of them.
It's funny, though, because...
But should we not?
Yeah, well, I hear what you say, but the thing is, though, I've been walking around Murfreesboro enough times as Drahoon that people are starting to recognize who I am.
Who you are and what you're doing.
Right, so, like, I go into Spinelli's all the time dressed as Drahoon, and nobody says anything, because, like, the staff knows me, like, they know that, I'm there. They probably can figure out what I'm doing there for, and...
Sure.
But it's funny, because that played out in a really weird episode. Yeah. So, I went into Spinelli's. You may have seen, I did a live stream a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I did.
So somebody, a friend of mine who has a podcast, he's part of the Tennessee Horror Network, and he lives in Knoxville, so I had to Skype. I had to do the interview over Skype. Yeah. So I just decided, hey, let's just live stream it on Instagram. It'd be a lot of fun. So I did. So I got into, of course, I texted the manager to let him know I was coming in. Mm-hmm. So I went in, took a seat, set everything up, just started recording. And, of course, I get looks from people. It happens.
Sure, you're just like a vampire in public.
It's not a normal thing. But,
sure.
But the wait staff knew what was going on. So, like, they weren't
Nobody was alarmed.
Yeah, nobody was alarmed. So I'm sitting there. And then finally the interview wraps up, and about the time we actually get done with the interview, there's a guy who walks in, and I don't know if he's homeless or what. He's an older guy, But within 5 minutes of him being there, I figured out pretty quickly that there was definitely something wrong with this dude. Like, he was mentally unstable because, like, he was basically cackling maniacally and talking about a whole bunch of stuff that... Like, he made a Charlie Chan reference.
So you were about to be a real fucking problem for him, I have a feeling. You being dressed as a vampire is going to be a real issue for this individual.
So I'm getting there. And somebody had actually come up to my table and asked me, like, hey, like, you know, what are you...
The fuck are you doing dressed like a vampire?
What are you doing here? And I explained it to him, and then you just... Of course, when you finally explain it to people, like, they think it's just the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
But like, initially, it is very unsettling.
I don't think it would even be unsettling. I would just be that guy that I'd have to know. I'd be like, dude,
right.
What are you doing?
And that was his reaction. He's like, so what are you supposed to be? And then,
well, in today's day and age, it's not weird to see someone walking around filming themselves doing something, so you'd be like, hey man, I kinda wanna check that out. What are you doing?
Right.
You know?
So he goes back to his seat, and then I walked to the bar to get a menu because the bartender, God love him, like he was at this point, I think he was the only person that was actually working that night. Like it was just him, and he was also waiting on like literally like 30, 40 people in the restaurant by himself. So I just walked up to the counter and I just kind of made eye contact with him. I said, "Hey, I'm just gonna take a menu, but you know I'm gonna get some food in a minute." And right about the time that I
still dressed like a vampire.
Still dressed like a vampire. Right about the time that I got up to the bar, I heard the dude just kept cackling, and I walked back to my table, and finally he turns his focus towards me. He's like, this is what he says in this exact voice: "You gotta be crazy coming up in here dressed in a necktie." And I just looked back at him.
Jesus.
I looked back at him. I said, "Well, I could probably say the same about you."
Yeah. What was he wearing?
He was dressed normal. He just wasn't acting normal.
He was being
he was being very...
drugs, you think?
Maybe. Drugs, or he was just like a schizophrenic.
Or
maybe,
crazy as shit. You have to be crazy in here to come in here in a necktie.
Yeah, and that was the thing. The necktie was what was bothering him.
The makeup and the cape and everything else.
Nothing else but just the necktie.
The necktie itself. You gotta be out your fucking mind for walking.
So, I look up over and I notice that literally everybody in the restaurant is staring at us. And then it hit me as like, oh my God. For people that don't know me, this is what real life is like.
Well, and
like, this is what, like, it dawned on me, it's like, wow, these poor people have seen enough tonight.
Well, yeah, because, like, one, whenever they go home and tell people, no one's going to believe it.
No.
They're going to go, no, I shit you not, this guy was dressed like a vampire.
And he was talking to crazy.
To a crazy guy, and the guy was talking about his necktie. And they're going to go, but you were at a bar, you were drunk. You were drunk.
There's no way any of this happened.
Yeah. Cool story.
Yeah, so that's just part of it.
Yeah.
So they finally asked the guy to leave because apparently this was like a normal thing. Like he would come in, he'd sit down, he'd laugh, he'd bother customers, and so they asked him to leave. And I moved tables because he was making me feel uncomfortable. Like I felt really bothered. Like I moved upstairs and I flagged the bartender down. I said, "Hey man, I just want to let you know I just changed seats because dude down there's bothering me."
Being crazy.
And the irony was not lost on me that me as a vampire was bothered by some old guy that was just
crazy.
Sitting there.
Yeah.
So that's only part of it. So
because at some point you have to think that they were like, well, dude, if you don't want people to fuck with you, you can't come into public dressed like that. Like they had to kind of have a little bit of that, I would figure.
Well, no, because like I said, like the bartender knows me.
Yeah.
So like he knew who I was. So like he, And to my I wasn't bothering anybody. Like I was literally, even though it was hard, like I was trying not to draw any attention to myself.
Yeah, which is tough. I mean,
which is hard.
That would be very difficult.
But
in the middle of the summer, dressed like a.
But so he's they get him out. I finally sit down to eat, and I've got somewhere to be at 9:00. And what I was hoping to do.
So I got to know, what did you order to eat? Because it's important now. You dress like a vampire.
Slice of pizza. It was just a slice.
So a vampire is sitting in a bar.
A breakfast pizza.
Eating a breakfast pizza.
Yeah.
You can't make this up.
No, you can't make this up. So I'm sitting there eating my breakfast pizza, which was really good, by the way. And I got it for free because I had to wait.
Shout him out. Who was it? Who made it?
Dave.
Dave from
Newton's and Spinelli.
Shout out Dave from Newton and Spinelli.
Great guy. He's also a vet.
There you go.
So he got me the pizza, which was super good, but so much time had elapsed between the end of the interview and me eating that I didn't have time to go home and change.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, screw it. I'm just gonna go where I need to be, dressed as Drahoon. So where I had to be, it was a comedy stand-up comedian showcase at the Borough. So now I've done a show at the Borough. So the same organization that was putting on this stand-up comedy show was also the same people that put on my first live show this year.
Got it.
So me coming dressed in as Drahoon, it's like, okay, it's a little weird that he's dressed up tonight, but we know who he is. So
one of our characters is here.
It's fine.
Sure.
So, and I explained to a couple of the people that knew me. It's like, yeah, this is why I'm dressed up. Like, I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder or anything like that. And they were, and everybody was cool. Good. But there was one stand-up comedian who wasn't from around Murfreesboro. She's Nashville based, and she took one look at me. And she was like the fourth or fifth person that was up. And when she finally got up to do her set, she gets up on the mic and she says, look, I want to point out that there is a guy dressed as a vampire in the bar. And nobody seems to be bothered by it.
And so you ended up actually becoming the center of attention once again. But, yeah.
But it was so funny.
It is.
And it just hit me. It's like, this is like, that is the best encapsulation of my life.
But you're also, look at the marketing right there. That's
right.
Had you had a few business cards, you'd been like, hey, real quick.
Hey, Count Drahoon, check it out.
Check this shit out. This is why I'm dressed that way.
Yeah.
So perfect segue. Tell the people, Count Drahoon, where can they find it? Where are you most active right now outside of your live shows? And then give them where you can find those.
I'm on iTunes.
You are, yes. Which, as I just found, I was subscribed to the old one.
Yeah, so there's 2 feeds for Count Drahoon's Feature Fright. And you want to go to the one that's not labeled Bandit Mass Media. So if you find Count Drahoon's Feature Fright on iTunes, make sure you're subscribing to the one that's authored by Taylor Gentry.
Okay.
That's the correct feed. We don't broadcast out of the old feed anymore.
Gotcha.
Because it's from our old website. So because I'm only doing Count Drahoon. So
not camcorder TV.
Yeah. So Count Drahoon has its own website now. It's featurefright.com. So you can go there, download the latest episodes, and of course we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher and Google Play.
Good.
And then if you are in the Nashville, Murfreesboro area, the greater Nashville area, starting in January, we're going to start doing live shows from Nick Newton's and Spinelli's. Our first show of the year is going to be January 16th.
What time?
It's 7. It's
PM?
Like 7 p.m.
Get that breakfast pizza.
It's seriously a really good. It's called the Walk of Shame. It's a great. That's
pizza. The name of the pizza.
The Walk of Shame. Yeah.
What's all on this pizza?
It's eggs, your choice of bacon or sausage, and potatoes and cheese, of course.
Sounds delicious.
It is delicious. It's probably my favorite pizza on the menu.
I gotta make it down to that one. January
the 16th.
At 7 p.m.
Yeah, and if you're a voice actor that lives kind of close, because I don't know when you're going to have this episode ready.
Tonight.
Okay, so on the 15th of this month, we're actually hosting auditions for...
I was going to hit you up about that. I need to come up to that.
Yeah, so if you want to be in a Count Drahoon show...
What are we doing? A table read? Are we walking in, presenting ourselves to you, the director?
Yeah, so I'm going to have excerpts from the script in January.
That you will send to?
Yeah, no, I'm going to have them there, at Spinelli. So basically what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to assign you a scene, have you break up, read through it, because I want to hear how you sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside of that, I'm also going to do this thing where I call them Foley exercises, but basically I'm just going to give you some random props, and I'm going to have you make the noises that I need you to make, because we're doing live sound.
So it's almost like you have to be able to do voice acting of not only a character but of noises like a cappella.
Well, you don't have to know how to do both.
I get it, but you're saying you want to showcase your talents if you can. What was the actor? I just watched it on Moana. I don't know if you've ever watched the movie. There's a character in the movie. It's just a chicken. Mm-hmm. So all he does in the movie is baka. Mm-hmm. It's actually a really famous actor that they hired to do that baka because they're like, dude, he does it perfect.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And
but I don't know who the actor is.
It was the guy. If you told me, the guy from. So have you ever seen the movie The Knight's Tale?
It's been a long time.
With Heath Ledger.
Uh-huh.
Remember the redhead guy that's really funny?
Yeah. Okay. He
was also Pirate Steve from Dodgeball.
Yeah. Alan Tudyk.
Him, yes.
Yeah, no, he's a great voice.
That is the.
He's awesome.
He is the fun fact. He's the voice of the chicken.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me because of course they would get him to do that.
So December 15th, Newton's.
Nick
Newton's and Spinelli's.
Yeah, Nick Newton's and Spinelli's. The auditions are at 5.
At 5.
Yeah, but if you just want to come for the show, it's going to be January the 16th. That's going to be like it's going to be a Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay.
And so we're going to have 2 audio tales, and then in addition to that, we're going to have our very first live edition of Interviewed by a Vampire, my interview segment.
Are you announcing who that interview is going to be yet?
I'll go ahead and announce it. So I mean, keep in mind, card is subject to change.
Sure.
But it looks like our first guest is going to be Mr. Jeff Wedding.
Jeff Wedding.
Yes, he is he's a local filmmaker.
Okay.
He just his latest film, Tennessee Gothic, was just released on video on demand and on DVD.
On Prime, you mean? Like Prime on demand?
I don't know if it's Prime on demand. I think it's Vimeo and video.
Vimeo, okay.
But it is a really it's available for purchase if you go to I think GypsyRootProductions.com.
Yes. You
can actually buy a copy of the movie, which I did. He autographed it for me. It's a really good movie. I think it's his best movie so far. I've actually seen all but 2 of his films, so I think this is his best one so far. It's based off of a short story by a horror writer named Ray Russell. Ray Russell. I'm familiar with who he is because he wrote a story called Sardonicus, which was actually made into a film back in the 60s. It was directed by the same guy that directed the original House on Haunted Hill.
Ooh.
Yeah, William Castle. So it's a really good movie.
Ironic name, House on Haunted Hill. His last name's Castle.
Yeah. I never thought of that, but yeah.
Leave it to me to put together obvious bullshit that doesn't mean anything. That's what.
I mean it could mean something. But yeah, so we're gonna have him in January, and I'm excited because I've been wanting to do this for a while. Like I've taken the show in a different direction. I'm sure we will do pre-recorded podcasts again at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, my goal is to have all of our tales, our features of fright, recorded in front of a live audience from now on. So we'll have live actors and live sound.
Which I have to tell you, just from the little snippet that I caught while we were listening pre-show, I can tell you it does add a different element to it because you've always mixed comedy and horror together, which I've always appreciated, but it's much different when a lot like people make the argument that Friends is not actually a funny show, and if you cut the laugh track out of Friends, they go, look, the jokes aren't funny.
Mm-hmm.
Opposite in your situation, your jokes are always funny, and then when the crowd actually laughs, you're like, oh my god, that was funny. Right. And it hits a little harder. Mm-hmm. So that I actually enjoy of it, but I will be honest, as one of the OG listeners, yes. I do miss those pre-recorded with the sound effects, crunching through the leaves. Man, don't sleep on those episodes, because going back to those days, those are great episodes as well.
No, we are... No, we're definitely going to do. I'll be honest. I don't know. It's a little bit up in the air because this is the direction I want to go,
mm-hmm.
and I have to see how well
it's working.
Yeah,
it's going great.
I have to see how well it actually works, because it may come to pass that it's not working as well as I thought, and we'll just have to go back to the original form.
I think as long as you guys keep kicking out the type of content that you are, and you're keeping it original, and just also remembering too, you can do whatever you want.
That's the beauty of it.
At some point, you can go, hey, every single week we're going to tell a different monster story,
mm-hmm.
and we're just going to act the shit out, and we'll do it under the Count Drahoon name. But yeah, I mean, with your deep love and passion of the field, I don't think you're ever going to run out of content.
No, and speaking of, I've been teasing this a little bit, but if I can get everything to work out well, come the summertime, we're going to do hopefully a 6-part series within Count Drahoon,
mm-hmm.
that's going to take from June through the end of the year of 2020.
So it's going to be like a mini-series.
Yes, it's going to be a mini-series. It's going to be science fiction.
Okay.
And it's going to be political satire. Which, I mean, there's...
So, like, Joe Biden's head in a alien
Well,
capsule.
it's a little more subtle than that,
Okay.
but yeah. Which I guess us talking about politics today really wasn't a bad idea after all, because that does kind of
spark some.
It gives me a chance to kind of segue into that. I'm working. Yeah, right now I just finished part 1 of the series. I sent it off. I got a friend of mine who I let him read my scripts, just to kind of get a gauge of where I need to go, how I'm doing. He gave me. I had some pretty good feedback, by and large. So right now I'm writing part 2. I should be able to finish that probably sometime this week. And I'm just trying to make it into 6 parts.
One more thing, and then I'm gonna let you go because I know you actually have a place you got to be. What does your writing process look like? Do you have a recorder app on your phone and you talk to it and then listen back,
No,
or are you pen to paper?
I don't do that.
I'm a note taker in my phone. I have a notes app and I write notes.
So I'm a little all over the place. If I had to compare it, and granted, I'm not comparing my quality to that of Mr. Billy Joel, but my script writing process is very similar to his songwriting process. Sometimes I just get like a phrase or a word stuck in my head, and then I just sort of build the story from around that. Or I get like a character that is saying something that just really, it doesn't necessarily have any meaning at the time, but then I'll take that fragment, that image in my head, and then I'll just sort of expand from that. Sometimes they come to me in dreams. Sometimes it's, I'll take a fragment that's percolating in my head, and then I'll take something that's going on in my life, and I'll just sort of mesh it together. Because I do, if you pay attention to my work, I write a lot about heartbreak.
You do?
So, and actually I wrote a script. I won't give her name, but basically this year, in terms of like my romantic life, has just been a nightmare. Because I got mixed up with a girl who I was pursuing, and she was just...
Is this the one that was a polar opposite of you?
Yeah.
In the sense of smoked or not smoke, but
Well, she was younger than me,
yeah.
so like she was still, she liked to party
with the wildness.
Yeah, she was still like super wild. But even for like a night, I'm not gonna say how old she is.
Sure.
Although I probably screw it. I'll say she was 19.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
No, at least legally, it's not a problem. No. But like from a standpoint from somebody who like me, who's like trying to pursue a romantic relationship with somebody. Very
not the age range.
Poor judgment on my part, and I will. Yeah, I'll cop to that. But I would argue that this situation was probably a lot worse than just like an immature person trying to be with an immature person. Like there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of just really, really bad stuff that happened.
But that's not your first go around with a relationship. Like that's a lot of people unfortunately can relate to that because relationships oftentimes until you find the one that works.
Well, I should clarify. Like I didn't actually date this girl.
Sure.
It was like a weird. Like
testing the waters.
Yeah, like somebody called it a quasi romantic relationship. I guess you could call it that because she knew how I felt about her, and even though she didn't want to be in a relationship with me, she still used me because it made her feel good about herself that somebody wanted her in that way.
Which again is not the first time that's happened.
Not
in
the
the
first
world.
time that's happened. So,
it's a very common thing.
Right. So basically, I basically made her a character.
Yes.
In the Count Drahoon universe.
Yes.
So the story Kill the Flame, the vampire Lana, that's her. That's who I based
but not
that
her
character
real
on.
name. Not
right, it's not her real name,
yeah.
But like a lot of what she said in that particular episode was actually an actual conversation that her and I had.
That you had.
Yes. So that, and then
how does that feel? And I gotta stop you. How does that feel when you're telling that or you're hearing that story being played out over the loudspeakers of Newton and Spinelli's, and you, for you as the author, the actor, the director, everything, you're hearing your life throughout your own work of art. What is that like? Do you realize it in that moment, or is it so like you're being the orchestrator of everything that you don't even really catch it? Like, oh shit, that's my story.
Well, so with that one, at first I was like, you know what, this is deeply personal.
It's very vulnerable.
It's very vulnerable. Like, do I really want to put this out there?
I respect the hell out of it.
It is because, that particular episode was very steamy, very sensual. And, of course, it wasn't the point in the story where, when everything is accurate up until the part where they get to the apartment.
Gotcha.
So, there wasn't anything that actually ever happened.
It never transpired in real life. It went that way for theatrics.
Right. And I even and actually in hindsight, I told her about the story. And I had her listen to it.
Okay.
And she liked it, or at least she said she liked it.
Yeah.
I don't know. And she didn't take issue with the romantic parts because I told her, I said, look, I took liberties with this. I had to because if I had if I had basically retold the story verbatim, it would have been boring.
Well, and we talked about that once before, and I think in the last time you were here, we talked about while you do portray characters, they are deeply rooted in your life.
Yeah.
So we talked about how you do always try to tread carefully in that area, where it's you realize you are theatric. What's the word I'm looking for? Dramatizing a situation.
Yeah, dramatizing a situation.
But at the same regard, you do have to still go, well, even though it's being dramatized, that's still a person. And they're going to have a feeling some people will never find out that they've been characterized into a story of ours. But, I tell stories on my podcast all the time because you see how this works. We didn't plan to sit here for an hour and a half, but you get to going and all of a sudden you hit the stop button and you go, fuck.
Well, here's the thing. I shot myself in the foot when I told her about it a little bit. Simply because now I've written another story about her.
You've written 2 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I plan on performing that story live in February. For Valentine's Day.
Ooh.
So.
Steamy, stay tuned.
Well, yeah, so it's kind of, I didn't realize this until we were talking, how fitting it was to make her character into a vampire, because vampires drain.
They drain.
And that's what it was. It was a very, especially towards the end, it was a very draining friendship for me.
I have a song. Remind me when we stop rolling the camera. I have a song that you may be able to use. Either I see it being the song that fades out at the very end of the episode. I'll read the script too, and I'll see if it maybe fits. But I'll show you the song. I think it'd be good for that part of the episode. All right, Taylor. I know you got places you got to be.
No, seriously, it's all good.
I'm so grateful that you came down, and you are now tied with actually your brother.
Cool.
For the most frequented guest on this podcast.
So next time in the next few months we'll have to have an episode where it's the 3 of us. Again, so that
but then it would be even.
I know. Well, we can keep it. It's like a battle.
Yes, it'll be even one more time, and then whoever schedules the next episode, then we'll go from there.
I will make sure to leave. I will make room for you. So I am determined to be the most frequent guest on something. So
I appreciate
who better than you?
You are now officially the snazziest dressed guest. So you did win.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. All right, guys. Count Drahoon podcast. Video is turned off. Audio is there, guys. We are out of here.